Uh, Good evening, portfolio managers. Uh, to introduce myself, I'm Pallavarajan, one of the founding member and director of PMS Bazaar, and I welcome all the portfolio manager for an insightful session organized by PMS Bazaar. And I thanks and appreciate all the portfolio managers for taking your time in joining with us. I take this opportunity to thank CFA Society India for being our knowledge partner for this initiative. So today we have Mr. Sanjay Parekh and Mr. Piyush Singh will be joining eventually, and they will take us through the presentation on the topic next steps for performance presentation of PMS portfolio. Before I hand over to Piyush and Mr. Sanjay, so let me try to highlight a few points about the industry, and then I will try to set up a context for this webinar and what you can expect from this session. So if you look back the last decade, the major amendment like what we see is that in 2012 February, the minimum ticket size has been increased from 5 lakhs to 25 lakhs. And post that, according to us, we don't see that any major amendment which has happened in the PMS regulation. PMS Bazaar is operating since 2017. During this 3 years time, we had opportunity to meet a lot of large investors like family offices and so on. What we found is that the majority of their allocation into equity investment has been moving on to mutual funds. When there is a merit as a product for PMS, however, the majority of the investment were moving into the mutual funds. So we've been trying to understand the reason, and what we found is that there was a common myth between these investors stating that PMS is not highly regulated product. There is a when comparing with mutual funds. And thanks to SEBI, they've come out with a significant regulation in the month of January this year, 2020. And I believe this regulation will will be one of the strongest pillar and one of the strongest milestone for the industry. And we also believe that there will be a major shift, specifically for a larger client, would happen from other asset class to PMS. So, having said that, today today the key reason behind this webinar is that after this regulation, we got a lot of queries specifically on the written computation. Now, there is no proper definition which has been given by SEBI, unfortunately, and there have been different reporting, like being it model or T1. There have been various reporting. But finally, now SEBI has defined like how portfolio manager has to report. So we thought, being getting a lot of queries on this subject, we thought to take help from CFA Society and then address the portfolio manager to solve this. This is an attempt to solve your queries. And in addition to this, performance, Mr. Piyush and Sanjay will also take us through GIPS, which is a global standard, and they will be discussing about that as well, which is in the benefit of the industry. So before I hand over, let me give a small introduction about Mr. Sanjay and Mr. Piyush, and then I will hand over the forum to them. Sanjay is the head financial product distribution at Mahindra and Mahindra Financial Services Limited. Prior to this role, he has been CFO, CEO of AMCs of Mahindra Manulife, Deutsche Bank, Taurus, and Aditya Birla over the last 14 years. Prior to the mutual fund industry, Sanjay was heading product management and accounting services at Aditya Birla Sun Life Insurance Company. Sanjay has spent more than 10 years at the Aditya Birla Group in various roles. Sanjay started his career with Arthur Andersen in 1991, during which he has also become a chartered accountant. He completed his CFA in 2005 and has been an active volunteer with CFA Society India. He is currently involved in making global investment performance standard popular in India. And about Piyush Singh, Piyush is heading the investment performance analytic division and leading the GIPS effort at Quantum Advisor and its affiliates both onshore and offshore. He spearheaded the GIPS compliance of Quantum AMC and Q Emerging Market Corp, the US-based affiliate of Quantum Advisors, and has over 18 years of experience in the financial services industry. He joined Quantum in the year 2006. Prior to joining Quantum, he has worked with Rajiv and Rajesh Chartered Accountants for 4 years on concurrent audit assignment, Deutsche Bank's domestic custody services. Piyush is commerce graduate and holds CAPM certificate from CAP Institute and is an active volunteer with CAP Society. So I welcome Mr. Sanjay and Mr. Piyush for the show, and I will hand over them and they will take it forward from here. Welcome, Mr. Piyush and Mr. Sanjay.
Thank you, Pallav. I'll just share my screen. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on next steps for performance reporting. We will just let you know what our thoughts are on the latest SEBI regulations on performance reporting for PMS portfolios. And this is, a little oversight of how the regulations have moved over time. And one of the things that I noticed that, there have been significant changes, once every decade. And this latest regulation has, of course, taken it from to 50 lakhs. And, there are these changes that have come in performance reporting. Let me go to the next slide. So these are the material changes that have happened in the current regulations. The earlier regulations had no concept of an investment approach, and this is a concept that has recently been introduced. Whereas earlier there was a requirement to give a weighted average return of all the portfolios of a PMS manager. Now the requirement is to give average return on an investment approach basis, and what an investment approach is something that we will talk about. There is a change in the calculation methodology, or rather I would say that there is an elaboration of, or there is a more specific requirement as to what methodology has to be used to compute the return. Earlier there was no mention. I mean, the weighted average return is just a way of computing the returns of all the portfolios of the manager, whereas now they are saying that you need to use the time weighted rate of return for computing the return of each portfolio, and Piyush will talk more about it later on. There is a slight change in performance reporting. Earlier it was at a performance level, so you would see that for all the portfolios that were managed by the firm, you would just get one return number, whether it was a debt portfolio or whether it was an equity portfolio, or even within an equity portfolio, whether it was a large cap or a mid cap or a hybrid portfolio. You would really just get one number, and that is sought to be rectified by this whole investment approach. And now the performance reporting is at an investment approach level, so that is how it will be rectified. Further, there was no requirement for auditing of performance. Of course, there was a requirement to audit the statement that was sent to the client at the end of the year, but whatever was being reported to SEBI on a monthly basis was not getting specifically audited. But now this audit has to be specifically performed and submitted to SEBI. So that's a new change that has happened in this regulations. Talking about investment approaches, now this is what the SEBI regulation is saying. And what I found very interesting is that though the main regulations lays out this kind of a definition, there is something more that they have given in the circular, which was released in February, which gives a little more detail on what needs to be done. But let me share with you my sense of what I believe SEBI is looking for. An investment approach is basically an aggregation of one or more portfolios with a similar investment mandate, objective, or strategy. So if you're offering, let's say, 5 strategies, a mid cap strategy, a large cap strategy, a hybrid strategy, a private portfolio strategy, and some other strategy, then you need to classify all your portfolios into one or more of these strategies. Okay. And based on that, you need to report performance. So you first compute the performance of each portfolio, and then you aggregate the performance of all the portfolios to arrive at the return of the investment approach. Now, the key thing here is that, why is this investment approach important? I mean, imagine you are talking to a client, you are doing his risk profiling, and you reach that he's an aggressive investor, so maybe a mid cap or a small cap portfolio is very pertinent to that kind of an investor. Would it make sense to show him the return of a hybrid portfolio? Would it make sense to show him the return of a large cap portfolio? So you need to show him the return, and the main regulations lays in needs to be done. But literally, investment approach is basically an objective or strategy. So private portfolios into one or more of these strategies. In the past, why is this investment approach important? It's not a market into that kind of an investor. Since to show him the return of what the firm has earned for its needs to be shown is what have all the customers that have actually investment strategy, what have they earned in the past, the firm. You need to ensure that all the portfolios are getting classified into one or more investment approach. If you start off with 5 investment approaches and at the end of the exercise, if you realize there is one client or there are a few clients who are not really fitting into any of those investment approaches, then you will have to actually define investment approaches where you can put those portfolios in, so that whenever a new client comes looking for that kind of a strategy, you will show that performance to that client. And the next bullet is really the whole crux of why this is important. Creating meaningful investment approach is important for fair presentation, consistency, and comparability of performance. If a client is really looking at comparing how a mid-cap portfolio of firm A has done vis-a-vis firm B, then it has to be comparable, right? So if you put a portfolio, a mid-cap portfolio with a hybrid portfolio, then it's really not going to be a meaningful presentation of your performance, right? And this is important that it is important that all of you have very, very stringent guidelines as to how portfolios are allocated to composites, because you will recall we discussed that this is going to be audited by an auditor, so he is likely to question that what is the basis that you have used for allocating a particular portfolio to a particular investment approach. It's important that you have this thing written down and follow a consistent policy for allocating portfolios to a particular investment approach. Now, it is possible that a client has signed up for a particular investment approach. Let's say he signed up for a policy, and after 3 years he comes back and he says, "Oh, you know what? I'm getting a little old. I think a mid-cap policy is too aggressive for me. Can we look at moving to a large-cap policy?" There are documented changes to the portfolio objective of the client. You should ideally not be moving portfolios from one investment approach to the other investment approach. Further, even when you decide to move a portfolio from one investment approach to another investment approach, the other thing that needs to be kept in mind, that the return of the portfolio when it was following the earlier investment approach needs to be retained in that older investment approach only. So the mid-cap, when the portfolio was following the mid-cap strategy, the portfolio performance of the mid-cap should be retained in the mid-cap investment approach, and that should not be simultaneously moved from the mid-cap to the large-cap portfolio. So these are some of the key things which need to be kept in mind while devising investment approaches, as well as determining how you are going to place each portfolio in different investment approaches. And this whole philosophy is very, very clearly outlined in the Global Investment Performance Standards of the CFA Institute. And it was designed because it was found that people were cherry picking portfolios to show kind of net to show, and it was not fair for prospective clients. And therefore, this very clear guidelines have been laid down in GIPS, and this is what we are recommending to all of you. So SEBI is not very clearly elucidated this to the portfolio from one investment approach to another investment approach to another investment. So we kept in mind that the in the PMS mid-cap regulations, the portfolio perform cap investment approach in there. And so this I was talking about the movement of portfolios from one investment approach to another. And what I was saying was that, you know, there is a possibility that a client may sign up for a mid-cap strategy and then may want to do large-cap strategy. So this movement of portfolio from a mid-cap investment approach to a large-cap investment approach can be done based on a documented change in strategy. However, the returns of the mid-caps of the portfolio when it was following a mid-cap strategy has to be retained in the mid-cap investment approach, and that performance should not be, you know, transferred to the large-cap investment approach. So this is actually the crux of the global investment performance standards as to how composites, we call it composites within the GIPS framework. Here SEBI has called it investment approach. So how investment approaches have to be designed, how portfolios have to be allocated to these investment approaches, and the manner in which they can be moved from one investment approach to another investment approach is very clearly laid down in the GIPS standards. And if you have any questions, my recommendation to you would be that you could look up to the GIPS standards for guidance on how to tackle certain situations. So I think with that, we come to the investment computation part. Pallav, has Piyush joined? Can you take over from me, please?
Yeah, Piyush has joined.
Yes, Sanjay, I have joined. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Sanjay. And good evening, everyone, and warm welcome to the webinar once again. So I will start with the other aspects on the portfolio computation part and return computation part. So the return computation involves basically we have to do at two levels. One is at the portfolio level, and then we have to roll it up to the investment approach level, because now we have to report the performance and investment approach level. Okay. So, and then we will also look at the changes in the performance reporting annexures and formats what SEBI has brought about, and we'll also look at the performance audit requirement, which is a new requirement as per the SEBI regulation. So, starting with the portfolio return computation part. So, as we know, whenever there is we have to calculate a return. So, what we have to do basically is just to find out the appreciation depreciation in the portfolio value over as a percentage of the invested capital, which we say the beginning market value of the portfolio. So this method is pretty straightforward as long as there is no subscription or withdrawal happening during the time period. But the real challenge comes when there is a subscription or redemption happening in the time period. So this simple formula of calculating return won't work, because the new capital has been injected by the client or some existing capital has been withdrawn by the client. So we have to find out a different way of calculating a return. Now, depending upon what is the purpose of calculating return, whether it is we want to calculate return generated by the manager, or whether it is the return experienced or earned by the client, there are two different methods. So one is called TWRR, which is basically the return generated by the portfolio manager. And MWRR is something which is the return earned by the client, which is nothing but in simple terms, it is called IRR. So as we are talking about SEBI regulation, which talks a lot about TWRR. So we will be limiting our discussion to TWRR and its computation methodologies. So what is the TWRR? So TWRR is basically a return achieved by the client by the investment manager on the initial investment of say 1 lakh, 100 or 1 rupee or whatever you say over a period of time, assuming there is no subscription or no withdrawal. So when we say there is no subscription, no withdrawal, of course, we do understand, like in real time situation, of course, we hardly find a situation where there is no subscription or redemption. But what it does basically, TWR, the beauty of the formula is it removes the impact of the cash flows and the client directed cash flow, which are subscription and redemption, on the returns generated by the manager. So we will see when we'll see it by way of some example in the forthcoming slides, it will become more clear. So the TWR is something which we say it's the manager's performance, true manager's performance, and it is return generated by manager, and it can be computed using two methods broadly. One is we can compute it on the basis of market value of the portfolios and the value of the subscription redemption. And other method could be we can compute TWR using the unitized method. So we will look at both the methods which are generally followed in the industry as of now. So TWR market value method, it requires us to have certain data, which is of course the ending market value, beginning market value of the portfolio at the start and the end of the time period. Then we also require subscription redemption amount. How much, how much a total number of times clients have subscribed, given some new contribution to the portfolio, and how many times they have withdrawn it, and on what time they have done the contribution withdrawal. And we will also require the valuation immediately prior to the subscription withdrawal happening. Okay. So once we have this information, then we will have to break the overall time period. Say if we are calculating return for last 1 year, then we will have to break the entire 1 year time period into smaller sub periods. And then we have to calculate the return for smaller sub periods. And then we have to link the sub period returns geometrically to get the entire 1 year TWR. Okay. For calculating the sub period return, the formula is again the same straightforward formula. You have to look at the ending market value, beginning market value, and any subscription will get reduced because that's the client money, which is fresh money has come in, and any redemptions has to be added back. And then we have to divide it by the net capital employed, which is beginning market value plus subscription minus redemption. So let's look at a simple example in the forthcoming slide, and I think the concept will become more clear here. So assuming client started, manager started with 1 lakh of on 1st of Jan 2019. On 1st March, there was a subscription of 2 lakhs. So as we spoke in the previous slide, we have to strike a valuation immediately before 1st of March. So in this example, on 28th February, the market value of the portfolio was 99,000. Then again on 1st of October, there was redemption of 50,000. And so the valuation as of 1 day prior to 1st of October, 30th September, which was 3,25,000. And then on 31st December, the market value of the portfolio was 2,90,000. So first thing we have to do is to divide the entire 1 year time period into smaller sub periods. So first sub period would be beginning 1st Jan till 28th of February. So as you can see in the first column of the table below, they are the different sub periods, 1st Jan to 20th February, then 1st March to 30th September, and then from 1st of October to 31st December. Now in the second column, we can see we have calculated the sub period return. So for the first sub period, -1%, for second it is 8.7%, and for the last sub period is 5.45%. Now in the third column, we can see we have done the geometric linking of the various sub period returns. So now the total number is when all these computations are done, we have got a return of 13.48%. So this is the overall return that we have achieved in the 1 year time period, January 19 to December 19. And this is the TWRR, what we are supposed to compute as per the new regulations. Okay. The other method of calculating TWRR is the unit price method. So this method is something similar to what we all know, or what we have in the for a mutual fund scheme. So as you know, for mutual fund scheme, we don't take into account all the market values and the subscription and redemptions. What we do, if we have to calculate a return for time period, we simply look at the NAV per share at the end of the period and NAV per share at the beginning of the period, and we find the appreciation and depreciation. It's as simple as that. So here also, those who have got systems, portfolio accounting system and performance accounting system, the system can easily do these calculations. So what the system does basically, for every time there is a subscription or redemption, the units are issued or the units are reduced. And the issuance of units or cessation of units, basically, it normalizes the impact of cash flow on the performance. So, and here also, of course, because we have to strike the NAV per share number every time, so we will require subscription redemption immediately before the subscription redemption happening. So the same example, same data points, but here the calculations have been done in terms of unit price method. So the upper table gives the same data. Now on the lower table, we'll see, I mean, those who are familiar with the mutual fund accounting, they will be easily able to recognize this. So we have subscription and we have issued, assuming $10 was 10 rupees was the initial NAV. So we would have issued 10,000 units to the client. And then on 20th February, there was a cash flow of 99,000. So that's fine. On account of cash flow, we will get some more number of units, which is 20,222. So number of units have got increased. Similarly, on redemption, number of units have got reduced by 4,646, and now we have 25,556 units. And then at the end, the ending NAV is 11.35. So as you can see, the return of 11.35 over the initial NAV of 10 rupees, the return is simple. I mean, it's the same return, which is 13.48. And as you can see here, it's very simple in the sense, for any time period, if we have to calculate the return, all we have to do is to take the NAV at the end of the time period and take the NAV at the beginning of the time period, and you can simply calculate the return. But yes, because it requires lots of computation and issuance of unit, and whenever there is redemption, you have to reduce units. So in Excel, it is a little bit complex to do these computations. But if we have one system, I think the systems are capable of doing these calculations. So after having understood how to calculate return at portfolio level, now we have to calculate return at the investment approach level. So basically, the returns get rolled up to investment approach level. So here also there are two methods for calculating investment approach level return. One is which I would say it's an approximate method, but it is called beginning asset weighted method. So what we have to do is we have to look at the individual portfolio performance. Suppose there are 100 odd portfolios in an investment approach. We have to look at the performance of individual portfolio in the investment approach, and then you have to multiply it by the weight of the portfolio in the overall investment approach. Okay, and then you have to sum it up. So this is the mathematical notation for the summation function. So P means if you have one and n portfolio, so all the portfolio has to be multiplied by their respective weight and the respective return, and everything needs to be added up. And the weight is nothing but the market. What is the market value of the portfolio at the beginning of the period as a percentage of the overall portfolio, overall market value of the investment approach. So this is an approximate result. Why we are saying this approximate result? Because if there are cash flow inflow and outflow happening in between the time period, then of course this weight factor will undergo some changes. But assuming they are not much of cash flow, or suppose if you have many number of accounts and clients in the investment approach, 1,000, 1,200, 1,500, then even if one or couple of accounts have, or maybe even if 25, 30, 3,500 accounts have given some cash inflow and outflow, but if the size is not really material, then this weight will not change materially, and then this will still give us a kind of approximate number at the return number at the overall investment approach level. The second method is called aggregate method, which we believe is a precise method. So here again, for doing this computation at aggregate level, it will be useful if we have a system. So basically what the system does for all the thousands portfolio, what we considered in our previous example. So it will add the market value, beginning market value, ending market value, or the cash inflow and outflow, subscription redemption, or expenses, management fee, or custody charges. Everything will add together, and it will create a bigger portfolio. You can call it an aggregated portfolio, composite portfolio, and then it will utilize the formula of the TWR formula, what we saw in previous slide, for calculating the investment approach to the overall bigger portfolio. And then this result will be, of course, it will be the most precise result. So again, here if we have a system, then it will be pretty easy to do these computations. So this is how we can calculate the TWR at investment portfolio level, and then we can roll it up to investment approach level. Moving on next to the reporting section. So SEBI has come up with in the circular on 13th February, they come up with two annexures, Annexure A and Annexure B. Annexure A was all about reporting to SEBI on a monthly basis. So of course, there are many other statistics what SEBI expects the managers to report on a monthly basis, but because this webinar is about performance. So we have covered only the reportings about the performance data here. So there are two tables basically. One is for discretionary PMS. The table is slightly different than the one what we have for non-discretionary PMS. So for discretionary PMS, we have investment approach level number and the benchmark number and 1 year, 1 month and 1 year performance. For non-discretionary PMS, I think all the portfolios have to be clubbed together and one number has to be reported for all the non-discretionary accounts managed by the firm. So as Sanjay said on the investment approach slide, so this is what the changes what regulator has brought about, and this is really a good change. Now it makes more meaning to report the return at investment approach level rather than reporting a return for all the clients taken together. Assume a situation where a manager has got 3 or 4 strategies like equity, fixed income, balanced, or maybe hybrid strategy. It really doesn't make sense to look at this a number which is a blend of all the numbers. It's really meaningless in a sense for any investor to understand. Now, suppose an investor wants to come into the large cap equity strategy, of course, he or she will not be able to understand what return the large cap strategy has on for this manager. But now looking at this investment approach level, of course, the client can understand easily, okay, what is the return achieved by the investment approach. One thing about benchmark is there is not much guidance on the benchmark. SEBI could have given some clarification of benchmark is and what we can see for sure is we should be reporting a total return on the benchmark and not the price return. And that is what we have been seeing now. Mutual funds are following. For any mutual fund scheme, if you look at the fact sheets, we will always see total return reported, and that's what SEBI has come up with in their performance reporting guidance of mutual funds. So I think same thing could have been implemented here also. Otherwise, the portfolios, we always know portfolios are always inclusive of the earning of the dividend, and if the benchmark a price return, then it is not apple to apple comparison. Moving on to second part on the annexure B, which is client reporting. Again, we have covered only the performance related section of that annexure. So earlier there was no specific format. People used to follow their own format for reporting client return, but here again SEBI has given you have to report the return of the client and then the return of the investment approach in which that particular client has invested, and then the benchmark performance. So 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year, these are different time period returns are what we are required to report. Here also the benchmark would have been, SEBI could have made it mandatory to report the total return of the benchmark. But it's fine. I think maybe SEBI will review it once again, the regulations, and then maybe they will come up with a clarification or some another circular later on. What we see here in addition to reporting the portfolio numbers, I think SEBI could have also added a row or column for risk numbers like Sharpe ratio or tracking error or duration. So that would have completed this annexure and the performance reporting from end to end. Moving on to the next section about performance audit. So this is really a good step towards an enhanced governance, what we believe. And so for what all we have to, the scope is not written anywhere like this is the scope, but in the same circular what SEBI come up with 13 February, they have explained like what all an auditor is supposed to check. So so they will be checking basically these aspects like return should be inclusive of return on cash and cash equivalent. So as we know, like cash allocation, just like any other allocation decision like stock selection or sector allocation, cash allocation is also an integral part of implementing the strategy. So if any returns are earned on the cash, and even if there is no return on the cash can lead to a drag in the performance if the market is rallying, and cash can benefit the manager if the market is falling. So this aspect should be captured in the overall return of the portfolio and of the overall investment approach. So this is a very good move by SEBI. Second is return should be net of all fee and expense. I mean, this is obvious because the client would like to know what is the final return what the manager has earned for me. So it should be net of return and expense, fee and expenses. Third one is any change in investment approach should be disclosed in marketing materials. So this is what Sanjay explained on the investment approach slide. So I mean, investment approaches are something which it may undergo some changes over a period of time. Suppose a manager started with a large cap, but over a period of time, if she feels like, okay, over a period of time now, might as well I can take exposure into small caps because it's the time for the small caps to perform good, or maybe that's what the manager feels. So there could be a slight change, and suppose the tilt towards small cap is large, then there could be a material change in the investment approach and the strategy. So that is something which the investor should know, because if the investor invested into large cap, then he or she should know where the money is going now, going forward. So that's why it is important to disclose any change in the investment approach. Then performance should be same across all the documents. This is again a very important move because earlier, as we know, like people used to report model performance, representative portfolio performance, or the best performing portfolio used to be reported in the marketing material. But that liberty is no longer there for the managers now. So now everywhere they will have to report the same number, be it regulatory filing or be it individual client reporting, or be it their marketing material. So that's a good move. Then there's a kind of the next one is I would say it's a kind of control. Like the firm level performance has to be the aggregate of the individual account performance. So suppose you have got 1,000 portfolios under a bucket, and so what you have to do, you have to find the aggregate performance of what auditors will come. They will check. They will look at the performance in each and every portfolio, and they will add it up to, and they try to roll it up to the overall firm level performance, and they will check whether or not it is matching. So what it ensures basically is the managers are not selective in calculating return for the investment approach or while reporting the overall firm performance. So all the portfolios have to be taken together while calculating the overall firm performance or the investment approach performance. Number one. Number two, the account inclusion and exclusion has to be consistent. So what does this mean is, if you have to include a new portfolio into an investment approach or in a total firm level performance as soon as the PMS agreement is signed and the client has funded good money. You don't have the discretion of taking the account after 1 month or after 2 months, or maybe excluding the account temporarily only because the performance is not good or performance is very bad. So that discretion is no longer there with the managers now. So this is a kind, I would say, is a kind of control. And then the frequency, with the frequency of audit is yearly. It has to be done after after 2 months of the financial year end, and it has to be, I think the audit has to be done by some qualified auditor. So all in all, it's a good effort by SEBI to bring in standardization in the performance reporting space, and thanks to the working group committee and their effort also. So that's all from my side. Now I will request Sanjay to take you through the last portion of the presentation, which is about GIPS, and we will see there how GIPS can help managers in addressing the performance reporting challenges what we feel in the industry. And we have also done some kind of comparative analysis between GIPS standards and the SEBI performance reporting standards. I hope you find that also useful. Over to you, Sanjay.
Yeah. So we just want to take a few minutes to tell you what GIPS is all about, and then we can take any questions. Piyush, there are already some questions in the chat. If you can review them in the meanwhile, it would be great.
Yeah, I will just have a look at that, Sanjay.
Yeah. So GIPS is Global Investment Performance Standards. These are developed and administered by the CFA Institute. They have been around for almost 30 years. Now, these are voluntary standards, so there is no compulsion by the CFA Institute on any asset manager to comply with these standards. Further, there is no regulatory authority in any part of the world which says that you have to comply with these standards. These have been developed in response to demands of the investment market primarily in the US, but now it has found its way all across the world, right? Just as we notice certain anomalies in our market, the genesis of these standards were that in the 1980s and 1990s, people found that every investment manager was showing great returns, and clients were wondering who is actually underperforming. And people found that, people were not really being very ethical in their performance reporting. And those are being covered here. So there was a reporting inconsistency where people were showing model portfolio performance. Firms were cherry picking portfolios as well as time periods to showcase great performance, whereas poor performance was hidden somewhere. There was a survivorship bias where clients who left the firm, their performance was taken out and only the performance of the continuing clients was shown. And you will recall I mentioned in my earlier talk that if you are moving portfolios from one investment approach to another investment approach, you have to leave the performance of that portfolio in that older investment approach. And this is what is also mentioned here. So GIPS covers all of these things. Again, there was lack of industry side comparability, and there were regulations were silent, and there were therefore these standards were first rolled out, and over the last 30 years they have been consistently been updated. Okay, so as recently as in 2020, from 1st of January 2020, the new standards have come into being, and these have evolved with the developments in the investment management industry. So a lot of venture capital firms or funds or close-ended funds were finding it difficult to comply with the standards the way they were, and they have now have a separate section for funds to comply, which makes it a little easier for them to showcase their performance without following a segregated account kind of a methodology. So there is a website dedicated to GIPS. The CFA Institute has set up this website, and the way you go around complying with the standards is, of course, you learn about the standards. It's all there on the web. You analyze that the gaps between what GIPS is saying and where you are. And you actually build all the infrastructure to comply, which is your software, your policies and procedures, your composite constructions, some of the things we discussed in the first part, where we said you need to look at what are the investment approaches you are marketing, put all your portfolios in those investment approaches, have a policy in place to say how you will allocate portfolios to each of those investment approaches, how will you move portfolios from one to the other, how will you value your portfolios, what's your policy as far as cash flows are concerned. Do all that, prepare your GIPS compliant presentation for each of your investment approaches, get it verified. Now, verification is not mandatory as per the GIPS standards. It is recommended, but it is not mandatory. Of course, it is mandatory as per SEBI PMS regulations. And there are, of course, updates that keep happening to the standards by way of circulars and guidance notes. So you can, read those and stay updated on and keep complying with those circulars and guidance notes as well. What are the benefits? Your firm is recognized as best in class in the industry, which has adopted the best processes for showcasing their performance presentation. If you go to market your services in the international market, it's almost a sine qua non that you need to have a GIPS compliant report, and it is something that will be recognized in many parts of the world. Over 1,800 firms already claim compliance with GIPS. Out of the largest 25 investment management firms, 24 of them claim compliance with GIPS. GIPS is popular in 48 markets across the world, and even in India, we have seen quite a few investment managers comply, and we are in talks with quite a few more who will also be claiming compliance shortly. This is what is a comparison of what is the latest SEBI regulations on PMS performance presentation and what GIPS talks about. So we looked at GIPS has got this concept called composites, which now SEBI has introduced in but it has chosen to name it as an investment approach. GIPS, earlier you had allowed only TWRR, but now it also has allowed IRR if it's a close-ended fund and if there are no inflows and outflows, and there are some other conditions, whereas SEBI is only requiring fund managers to use TWRR. The entire focus of GIPS is on potential clients. It really doesn't talk about existing clients. It talks about potential clients and how to show your performance to them. SEBI is talking about both, existing clients as well as potential clients. As we discussed, verification is voluntary under GIPS. Under SEBI, it is mandatory. Now, this is a very important point here when it comes to discretion. Under GIPS, what we are trying to really show is how the manager has done as far as performance is concerned. So if a client comes and gives restrictions to the manager saying, you know what, I work for the Mahindra Group, so you will not buy any of the equity shares of the Mahindra Group, or I don't like certain companies, so you will not buy those companies. So if that is going to restrict the manager from really following his this thing, he's got the authority, or he's got the choice to exclude certain portfolios if he believes that the client imposed restrictions cannot really allow him to do justice to the portfolio, right? So when you are computing the investment approach performance return, you can exclude certain portfolios, of course, based on a return down strategy or a return down policy. SEBI, of course, doesn't give that kind of a discretion. Whether you like it or not, you need to include all. And SEBI's definition of discretion is also different. It's like whether you have the decision-making authority or not. Okay, return computation methods. Performance history, SEBI only talks about 3 years. GIPS asks for at least 5 years and going up to more than 10 years in certain cases. So the more number of years you give, the better. SEBI, of course, the minimum requirement is 3 years. Of course, we would recommend that all of you give more years as much as possible. Benchmark is very clearly defined. Only total return benchmarks are allowed. There is no guidance, but we all know, as Piyush mentioned, that mutual funds, SEBI has clearly mandated that total return benchmarks should be used. So there's no reason why portfolio guys should use price only benchmark. Terminated accounts, switching of accounts between composites. We already discussed SEBI has no guidelines, but there are very clear guidelines under GIPS. Policies and procedures have to be documented. Risk measures. Now, the SEBI regulations do talk about, disclosing risk, and I will read out exactly what it says. It says portfolio risks, including risk specific to each investment approach, should be disclosed. But it doesn't really say in what way. So either you can use some words to describe the risk, or better still, if you can compute standard deviation, then it's a more accurate way of doing it. And GIPS also recommends, GIPS also mandates that you compute and disclose standard deviation. You have to maintain books and records. Of course, SEBI doesn't say it specifically in terms of performance, but it does, require all of us to maintain our records. So these are the resources of GIPS. There's a website. There are different standards for firms, asset owners, and verifiers. There is a GIPS help desk that you can reach out to, and of course, we are there to help you in case if you have any questions. I think with that, we come to the end of the presentation. Pallav, it's back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sanjay, and thank you, Piyush. There are a couple of questions which have lined up in Q&A session. And in fact, I appreciate that you've been taking these questions and addressing live, but there are a couple of more left. I would request, Piyush and you to pick up the question and address.
So the first question I can say is unanswered one is returns under different strategies are to be clubbed together. So the performance will also be for the entire portfolio, including all strategies. Sanjay, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe now the whole idea is to report the return at investment strategy level, what we call investment approach. So I'm not sure whether we have the liberty of taking the portfolio of two different strategy, or you can say investment approaches, and club together to report the performance. So to answer the question, the return has to be reported at individual investment approach, or you can say individual strategy level only. I hope this answers the question.
Yes.
Okay. So next question is about AMC provides monthly notes to investors. While we report performance at aggregate level, the portfolio holding and all, we report for the model portfolio level, right? Since some clients have certain stocks restrictions, the aggregate portfolio of the strategy may not be similar to the model portfolio. I think here again, we will have to report the performance and the portfolio at the investment approach level, because I don't think if you're not allowed to report the performance of the model portfolio, I really doesn't believe in essence, or you can say in spirit, SEBI would be okay with reporting performance, or reporting the holdings of the model portfolio, because the whole idea of reporting holding for sending it to a client, just to know the client, like what is how the portfolio looks like, what stocks and what sectors allocation, all that we have in the portfolio. So if the clients wants to kind of reconcile at a very broad level his or her performance, looking at the holding.
Question is more from a marketing material perspective. So he's saying that when we are, so for a potential client, I think it can still be at a model portfolio level, especially the allocation. But the return should not be of the model portfolio. The return should be the of the investment approach that you are marketing to that particular client. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. So if a client has certain stock restrictions, obviously it will apply only to that client's holdings. It will not apply to everybody else. And when you are reporting the portfolio holdings of that client to that client, obviously that's also confidential data. So you don't want to disclose one client's holdings to everybody else. And therefore you will continue to report client-specific data will be reported to each client separately, and that will only be client-specific data. Only thing is you are comparing the return earned by a client's portfolio with the investment approach. So that is a different thing. You will compute the performance of the client's portfolio using the TWRR, and of course you will also compute for the return for all the portfolios in that approach using TWRR methodology, and then aggregate it, as Piyush mentioned, using the two approaches that he spoke about. Either you weight them or you do it at a global level. But you will give the client, you will tell the client that your portfolio earned X, and the return of all the portfolios in that investment approach was maybe a different number.
So Sanjay, can you take up the exit load question? There is a question on exit load. I'm not very sure.
So there is exit load will be once the client has already exited the portfolio. So I don't think it will be a part of the investment approach. Right? You can ignore that.
Okay.
Performance audit of the investment firm has to be done for FY 19-20. No, since the regulations come into effect from 1st October 20, my sense is it would be for 2021.
2021, yeah.
I am going to a question by Mayur Shah. In case there are clients in same approach with different, wouldn't it enhance the performance while some? Yes, the regulations clearly says it should be net of fees and expenses. So yes, that will impact. And therefore, GIPS actually allows you to report both gross of fees and net of fees. Okay. Nupur Patel, what about dividend directly credited by company and shown as outflow by portfolio managers? Then it should be Piyush. This will be treated as a withdrawal.
Yeah. So if the manager is treating this as a cash outflow withdrawal, then it's fine. That is as good as you're computing TWRR. So that's not a problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
So from a TWRR perspective, you will show the dividend as a redemption. That's the question.
Sorry, Sanjay, come again.
So you will show the dividend as a return, right? As a return earned by the portfolio, and it will get added to the portfolio value. And when the dividend is withdrawn from the portfolio, you will show that as a redemption by the client. It's a cash outflow.
Yes.
Let me start with Mr. Srinivas. You are saying that if the investment approach is inactive for some period, which means no active client in the approach, how to calculate the approach return? Should we calculate the return from a reactivation date or from the inception date of the scheme or any other method, if any?
Okay, so I will like to understand meaning of. I believe the meaning of inactive investment approach is there are no clients in the investment approach as of now. Suppose they started with 100 clients and all the clients are redeemed over a period of time.
Correct.
And maybe there was no client for next 5-6 months or 1 year or 2 years, and again they started getting new clients in the investment approach. So in this case, what will happen? Technically, there will be a break in the track record of the investment approach. So for whatever time period they had a number of clients in the investment approach, you will show a track record. And after that, when there is no client in the investment approach, there will not be any track record. You should not show track record. And then again, after 2 or 3 years, again you started getting clients into investment approach. Then again you can start showing the performance. What you can do is always better.
Let's take a practical example, Piyush.
Yeah.
Let's say you are supposed to disclose a 3-year performance return, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you are on 31st December 2020.
Yeah.
Okay? That means you are supposed to give your returns from let's say 1st of January 2018, right? 18, 19, 20 calendar year.
Yeah.
So you had some clients on 1st of January 2018, and let's say by 31st December 2018, all the clients have exited that investment approach.
Yeah.
And on 2019, you had no clients, and let's say you had a client who came back into the strategy on 1st of June 2020. Now you're supposed to compute a 3-year return. How will you do it?
So in 3-year return, we will not be able to give a return, CAGR return for 3-year time period. We will have to provide the returns for the 2 time periods when we had the clients in the investment approach.
Yeah.
So usually what happens when you have to provide a
So
CAGR
would you recommend that they show a split return saying the return was in 2018 was X, in 2019 there were no clients, so there was no return, and the return in 2020 is Y?
Yeah, correct.
Now for everyone, this is where GIPS is a little better. It is a little more comprehensive because it asks you to show annual returns. So you could possibly show the last 5-year returns of the investment approach, and you can easily give a footnote saying that there were no clients in 2019 and therefore there is no return. But when there were clients in 2018 and 2017 and 2016, this was the return earned by the firm under that investment approach.
So Mr. Hiten have asked that should the TWRR returns to be annualized?
Yeah, it should always annualized. If it is a time period more than 1 year, the return should be annualized, unless someone is requesting you to provide a cumulative return or absolute return.
The next question is that TWRR returns can be distorted at strategy level when there are a large inflow and outflow. How to account the same? I think.
Yeah. So it is a possibility. I mean, like the returns could be distorted, but usually what happens if you are managing many number of portfolios, and the likelihood of one account affecting the skewing the weight of the particular account in the investment approach is not that big. So, but if you have a client which is kind of 70, 80, or 90% of the investment approach, and if they are coming in with huge cash, they are managing 100 crore, and they are again bringing 100 crore, and the huge cash is coming in. So to that extent, till the time that cash is not invested in the portfolio and the portfolio is not built to a mature portfolio, yes, it could have some impact on the performance. But unfortunately, we don't have any leeway. I mean, we have to include the account, the incoming account or outgoing account in the investment approach on the very first day they are coming, or whenever the new cash is coming, that also we have to include.
Fine, thanks, Piyush. We'll move on to the
In
next
fact,
question.
in GIFs, there is a provision. We can discuss that in detail later. But we have a provision in GIFs which basically removes the. There is a way we can actually remove the impact of cash flow. But I think in the interest of time, we cannot go into that. But yes, there is a provision in GIFs for that.
Can I move on to next question?
Yeah.
The performance for investment approach should be same in all the reporting. Is there a specific format in which portfolio managers display performance of an investment approach in marketing materials such as 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 1 year, 3 year, as specified in a monthly and quarterly report annexure? Can the portfolio manager display performance on month and quarter as well in the marketing material?
Yeah, you can. I mean, what you have to do is the annexure A is for SEBI reporting and annexure B is for client reporting and one-to-one client reporting for marketing material. You can whatever number you want to report, you report. All you have to ensure, like whatever numbers that you're reporting at investment approach level or overall firm level, that has to match with numbers what you reported to SEBI or to the individual client reporting, because individual client reporting also you must have seen there is investment approach number, right? So you can report whatever number you want to report. What you have to ensure, the bare minimum is required by SEBI, that is what you have to do. And over and above, you can report 1 month, 3 months since inception. That is something up to you. What is more important, you have to do it, whatever you do, follow it consistently. It should happen like today, because the month return is fantastically well. You will report this month, in this month's marketing material, report 1 month number. And next month, suppose the return is really bad, you will stop reporting 1 month number. So that is not a good performance reporting practice. So you decide well in advance and don't work in hindsight.
Yeah, there are a couple of yes,
One minute.
yes,
Also, do not annualize a sub-annual period return. So if you are giving 1 month return, don't say, if I earn 2% in 1 month, so I'm going to earn 24% per annum. Just say it's a 2% per month return.
Yeah.
And SEBI is very clearly said that in the disclosure document, you should give a 3-year return. And on its website, you should give a 1 month and a 1 year return. I don't think there is anything in the regulation which talks about marketing material, but it does say that wherever you are showing performance, you make sure that it is all consistent. So you will have to ensure that you give the returns of the investment approaches only in a consistent manner. You may choose which periods to disclose, but every month if you're reporting, make sure you're just being consistent in your report.
Fine. See, there are a couple of questions which has been lined up, on the firm level performance. To highlight few, is there any specific format? That is one. Can we compute firm level return by TWRR method? And how to compute, if at all, if we can compute, how to compute the TWRR method under firm level performance?
So let me take that. I think there are two aspects to it. One is when you say a firm level performance, the way you can do it, as was mentioned during the computation slides that we went through, is that you can take all the portfolios of your firm and aggregate all the holdings and compute a return. So that's one way of doing it. And of course, the other way is you compute for each portfolio and then you do a weighted average for all of them, and that's how you will compute the firm level performance. But the firm level performance is a meaningless performance, if you ask me, because if you have 5 different investment approaches, of course SEBI requires you to disclose it on their website, but other than that, I don't see where you will use that number. I mean, I don't think you're going to use that performance report number in any of your marketing materials or in any of your websites or whatever. So, Piyush, you want to add anything here?
No, I agree with you, Sanjay.
Okay.
Fine. See, due to time constraint, let us take 1 or 2 more questions. And if there's any question left, I would request Piyush and Sanjay to address, so that I will pass on to the respective portfolio manager who have taken this question. So can performance fees be charged as per XIRR, but SEBI reporting done as per TWRR? Because that is our historical method, changing in between would cause confusion.
Okay, so I think performance fee, SEBI has come up with a in the working group of paper. They had come up with a calculation methodology and performance fee also. Although we couldn't see that in the new regulation, but performance fee calculation is something which is it's between the client and the manager. And what in my experience of working with my firm Quantum is like we can see there are few clients who have adopted TWRR for comparing the performance of the portfolio and the benchmark for performance fee purpose, while there are few clients who are asking us to do the comparison based on MWRR. So it's up to the what arrangement clients have managers have. So I think that's the guidelines what one has to follow.
So any question you would like to take, Sanjay and Piyush from the forum?
So the TWRR Piyush is only for performance reporting, right? It really should not impact how you compute your performance management fees.
Yeah.
So I'll take one question, last question. So can we show both model as well as aggregate return both in the marketing collateral?
That's
if you ask us, no. See, look, you have to show real performance. Okay, model performance does not belong to any client, and that's the whole problem with model performance, right? It can be tampered with. So from a GIPS perspective, our answer is no, you should only show actual performance, and that's the only number that should be marketed and communicated. So
great. Thank you, Sanjay, and thank you, Piyush, for taking your time, and also thanks portfolio managers. Hope this presentation would have been useful and solved a lot of your queries. And also thanks Sanjay and Piyush for sharing insight about GIPS. So what I would request participant, in case if you feel that your question has not been addressed, or still if you have any query, you can send us an email to the same email address where you received the link, which is portfoliomanagers@pmsbazaar.com. We would take up this question with Sanjay and Piyush, and I request Sanjay and Piyush to address the same in the interest of the industry. So thank you everyone. Have a great weekend.
Yeah. Thank you everyone. Have a nice weekend. Happy Ganesh Chaturthi to all of you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.